Qualification starts in March for the 2024 Euros, a tournament which has been running since 1960 and has showcased the best that UEFA has to offer. But it may surprise you to know that of the 55 nations, over 20 of them have never qualified for the European Championships. So in this video, I'll be telling you the 5 nations that I feel have the best opportunity of qualifying and making their debuts this time around. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying these 5 will definitely make it, but make sure you stick around to the end of the video because I'll tell you which one of the 5 I think's got the best opportunity and is a banker to be there in 2024. As always, leave a like on this video, subscribe if you're new so you can be kept up to date with more international football content. With that being said, let's get into it, starting with number 1, Israel. I spoke about Israel in a previous video and said they were possibly dark horses to get to the 2026 World Cup, mainly due to their under-21s and their under-20s, who could lead to a potential new golden generation, if you like, for Israel. Now, it's a little bit early to see that blossom in the first team. We'll have to see how the under-20s especially get on in Indonesia in the under-20 World Cup. As for Israel's first team, they've been doing pretty well themselves, to be honest. They've climbed from 93rd in the FIFA rankings, where they were in 2019, to be 76 in the latest December rankings. So they're doing okay, and that's on the back of winning their Nations League group in 2022 and some good wins against Scotland, Austria and Slovakia. For Euro qualifying, they're in Group I, which I believe is one of the most intriguing groups. Switzerland always do well in qualifying, so I'd fancy them for top spot, but that second place is up for grabs, and even if Israel don't get that, because they won their Nations League group, they'll have a playoff spot as well, remember. So we really could see Israel at their first major tournament since the 70s. Number 2, Bosnia and Herzegovina. Despite qualifying in the 2014 World Cup, which was arguably their golden generation, Bosnia and Herzegovina have never actually qualified for the Euros. They came 4th in World Cup qualifying for 2022, but they were a bit closer than the table actually suggests. Their last 2 games were against Finland and Ukraine, and they lost both of them. Just 4 points from these games would have potentially meant they would have qualified for the World Cup. Despite that, they did have a pretty good 2022, only losing 2 out of 8 games and winning their Nations League group, which means they have a playoff spot as backup if they don't make it out of their Euro qualifying group. But I think they've got a good shot in the group. Portugal will likely win it, but they play Iceland and Slovakia first, who are probably going to be their main competitors for that second place spot. So it's a really good opportunity for Bosnia to pick up some early points against their main competitors. They'll just be hoping they don't bottle it this time like they did in 2022 qualifying. Number 3, Kosovo. One of FIFA's newest members, Kosovo was accepted into UEFA in 2016 following a campaign for membership since their declaration of independence in 2008. They've only attempted to qualify for the Euros once, which was the 2020 edition, and surprisingly for a new nation, certainly in football terms, they did pretty well in a tough group, picking up wins over Bulgaria, Montenegro and the Czech Republic. They even took a shock lead against England away. This time around, they find themselves in that intriguing Group I with Israel. As mentioned, it's a very competitive group and you wouldn't put it past them to be in the mix for that second place position. They do have some good players as well, most notably Real Mallorca's Vedat Mariki, who's their top goal scorer with 23 goals in 44 caps, and Barcelonelli, who's a regular midfielder for Reims. They have a tough test from the start, having to face Israel away, and unlike some of the other nations that we'll mention in this 5, they don't have the benefit of a playoff as backup, so they're really going to have to give it their all in the qualifying games. Good luck to Kosovo. Number 4, Georgia. I found out trying to research Georgia can be quite frustrating. More often than not, you're greeted with these guys. But the Georgia you want to hear about, well, they had a great 2022, winning their Nations League group in an undefeated outing, scoring 16 and only conceding 3 goals. That's enough to get them a playoff spot, but can they carry that form into their group? It's a tough ask for them. They've definitely got the hardest group of all the 5 nations we'll discuss in this video, with Spain, Scotland and Norway in particular. Georgia were in Spain's qualifying group for the 2022 World Cup and unsurprisingly lost both games. The last game against Scotland came in 2016, which they won, and they haven't faced Norway since 1999, so there's not really a lot we can learn from that. They do have a new emerging star though in Chicha Kvaratskhelia of Napoli, who has already bagged 10 goals this season for Napoli and has an impressive 10 goals for Georgia as well. And I've said it before, often the difference between some of these lesser nations is just that 1 or 2 star players that can just grab a goal out of nowhere. As I said, it's a big ask for Georgia. Can they do it in the group? I'm not sure, it's going to be tough, but they've got that playoff spot because they won their Nations League group. Their first game comes against Norway at home, which they're going to have to find a way to keep Haaland quiet, aren't they? Number 5, Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan have never qualified for a major tournament, including the World Cup, the Euros, and even the Asia Cup when they were part of the Asian Confederation between 1996 and 2004. But that may be about to change because Kazakhstan won their Nations League group, and as you know by now, that means they get a playoff spot, just in case they're not able to qualify through their group. But if I'm being honest, the Euro qualifying draw has been somewhat kind to them. It's not the hardest group in the world, certainly compared to B and C, which they could be in, and aside from Denmark, who you'd think would win this group, Kazakhstan's main competition will come from Finland and Slovenia. Now, Finland, to touch on them, only managed 2 wins out of 10 in 2022, so they're not exactly in great form. and Slovenia was slightly better, but not outstanding as well. So there's reason to believe that Kazakhstan can at least be competitive in this group. And it's Slovenia who they face first, followed by Denmark, which is probably the most difficult start Kazakhstan could have hoped for. But if they did get some points from these games, they then face San Marino and Northern Ireland, where you would expect they can pick up some wins. And looking back on their previous qualifying groups for World Cups and Euros, this is probably the kindest, I won't use the word easiest, but it's probably the kindest group that they've been in. Definitely an opportunity for them with that playoff spot. And that's my list, but I promised you I'd tell you the team which I thought would definitely qualify, and I'm going for Bosnia. They've got that playoff spot. I don't think they're in the hardest group, so they could probably even come second. And they've proven they can qualify for major tournaments before, because they qualified for the World Cup in 2014. A lot of the other countries we mentioned never even qualified for a major tournament. And there you have it, Bosnia is my pick out of the 5, but what do you think? And are there any other teams that I've missed that could potentially make their debut at the 2024 Euros? Let me know in the comments. As always, like and subscribe so you can be kept up to date with all the international football content I deliver, and I'll speak to you again soon.